Jake Morrison had cleaned up a lot of messes in his 32 years of life, but nothing quite prepared him for the particular brand of chaos that alien tourists could create. Take the Blorgens, for instance. They had 14 stomachs and apparently used all of them during their vacation cruise aboard the Cosmic Delight. The purple goo they left behind in the VIP lounge defied at least 3 laws of physics and possibly 1 commandment. "Just once," Jake muttered, scraping what looked like crystallized vomit off a platinum-plated table, "I'd like to clean up after humans who only have boring old food poisoning." The Cosmic Delight was the galaxy's premier luxury liner, a floating palace that catered to the wealthy and the weird from across known space. Jake had been working as head janitor for 5 years, which made him something of a legend among the cleaning staff. Most people lasted 3 months before the smell of fermented Zoltarian fish sauce drove them to therapy. But Jake had a secret weapon, complete and utter cynicism. When you expected the worst from every situation, alien bodily fluids became just another Tuesday. He was working on what appeared to be a small fusion reactor that someone had somehow clogged with hair when his cleaning cart's communication array started beeping. This was unusual for 2 reasons. First, nobody ever contacted the janitor directly, and second, his cart wasn't supposed to have a communication array. Jake poked at the blinking light with his sonic scrubber. "Well, that's new." The beeping intensified, then resolved into a crackling voice transmission. Female, desperate, and definitely not coming through official channels. "This is Dr. Lyra Voss, Galactic Research Station Epsilon 9. If anyone receives this transmission, I need help. They're coming for me, and what I've discovered, it could change everything. I'm being transported to Nexus 7. Please. If there's anyone out there who believes in doing the right thing over doing the profitable thing." The transmission cut to static. Jake stared at his cart. Did my cleaning supplies just become a rebel communication network? Because honestly, at this point, nothing would surprise me. He'd heard of Nexus 7. Everyone had. It was the galaxy's most secure prison, where they sent the worst criminals and political dissidents. According to the news feeds, this Dr. Voss was a terrorist who'd been caught trying to steal classified military technology. The Galactic Council had made quite a show of her arrest. But something about the transmission bothered Jake. Maybe it was the genuine fear in her voice, or maybe it was the way she'd said profitable thing with the exact same tone Jake used when talking about his paycheck. Either way, his finely tuned cynicism was picking up serious innocent person getting screwed by powerful jerks vibes. "Congratulations, Jake," he said to himself. "You've officially lost your mind. You're about to get involved in galactic politics because a woman you've never met sounded sad on the space radio." He looked around the VIP lounge, at the mess left behind by creatures who could afford to travel between star systems for fun, while others rotted in maximum security prisons. The Blorgen goo seemed to mock him with its purple, glistening surface. "You know what? Screw it. I've spent 5 years cleaning up after the galaxy's elite. It's time to make a mess of my own." Jake Morrison, professional janitor and amateur idealist, made a decision that would either save the galaxy or get him vaporized by prison guards. Probably both. He started planning the stupidest rescue mission in galactic history. Finding willing accomplices for a suicide mission turned out to be easier than Jake expected, mainly because everyone he knew was already slightly unhinged. Buzz Killington was Jake's first stop. The ex-military pilot worked in the ship's cargo bay, where he spent most of his time muttering about surveillance drones and checking over his shoulder for imaginary government agents. Jake found him reorganizing shipping containers for the 15th time that week. "Buzz, I need a pilot for something completely insane and probably illegal." Buzz didn't look up from his clipboard. "Finally. I was wondering when they'd activate you. What's the mission? Infiltration? Assassination? Please tell me it involves exposing the lizard people who run the Galactic Banking Consortium." "It's a prison break." "Even better. I knew Nexus 7 was a government black site designed to silence truth-tellers. When do we leave?" Jake blinked. "How did you know it was Nexus 7? Lucky guess. Also, you're terrible at whispering, and paranoid people have excellent hearing. Next was Penny Wrench, the ship's unofficial fix-it genius. She worked in the engine room, where she'd somehow managed to increase the ship's efficiency by 40% using spare parts and creative swearing. Jake found her elbowed deep in a plasma conduit, cursing in at least 3 languages. "Penny, want to help me steal a ship and break someone out of space prison?" She didn't even pause in her work. "Will it annoy management?" "Probably catastrophically." "Will it involve blowing stuff up?" "Almost certainly." "Will I get to use my experimental modifications that the safety committee keeps rejecting?" "I'm counting on it." Penny emerged from the conduit, grinning and covered in engine grease. "I'm in. When do we commit grand theft spacecraft?" The last member of Jake's crew wasn't exactly recruited so much as he was always there. Professor Nibbles was Jake's pet hamster, a small brown rodent he'd found in the ship's ventilation system 2 years ago. Jake had named him Professor Nibbles because he seemed unusually intelligent for a hamster, often appearing to understand conversations and occasionally rearranging objects in Jake's quarters in suspiciously helpful ways. What Jake didn't know was that Professor Nibbles was actually Zephyr Quantum Whiskers III, a highly advanced alien scout whose species had evolved from small mammals on a high-gravity world. His mission was to observe human behavior, but he'd grown genuinely fond of Jake and had been subtly helping him for months. "What do you think, Professor?" Jake asked, scratching the hamster's tiny head. "Ready for an adventure?" Professor Nibbles squeaked in what Jake interpreted as enthusiasm but was actually Zephyr saying, "Finally, some action. Do you have any idea how boring it is to pretend to be a normal pet?" The next challenge was acquiring transportation. The Cosmic Delight carried several maintenance shuttles for emergency repairs and supply runs. They were small, fast, and completely lacking in creature comforts, which made them perfect for under-the-radar travel. "So let me get this straight," Penny said as they stood in the shuttle bay at 3 a.m. ship time. "We're stealing a maintenance shuttle to fly to the most secure prison in the galaxy to rescue a woman we've never met because Jake's cleaning cart picked up a distress signal." "That's the plan," Jake confirmed. "And our total relevant experience consists of Buzz's military training, my engineering degree, your janitorial skills, and a hamster." "Hey, don't underestimate Professor Nibbles. He's got great instincts." Buzz was already running pre-flight checks with the efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Or someone whose paranoia had led him to prepare for exactly this scenario, which was more likely. "Shuttle's clean," he reported. "No tracking devices that I can detect, and I've disabled the automatic distress beacon. We'll be invisible to long-range scanners for about 6 hours before someone notices we're missing." 6 hours to break into the most secure facility in known space, Penny mused. Challenge accepted. As they lifted off from the Cosmic Delight's shuttle bay, Jake couldn't help but wonder if he'd finally crossed the line from cynical realist to dangerously delusional optimist. Then again, he'd been cleaning up after alien digestive disasters for 5 years. How much worse could prison guards be? Professor Nibbles chittered softly from his travel cage, and Jake took it as encouragement. He had no idea his pet hamster was actually calculating trajectory corrections and mentally reviewing advanced combat techniques. "Next stop, Nexus 7, Jake announced. "Try not to think about how many ways this can go wrong." "Too late," Buzz and Penny said in unison. Nexus 7 looked exactly like what you'd expect from a maximum security prison designed by people who'd given up on rehabilitation and just focused entirely on making sure nobody ever leaves. It was a massive, dark cube floating in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by defense platforms that could vaporize a battleship without working up a sweat. "Well," Jake said, staring at the fortress through the shuttle's viewport, "I've made a lot of questionable life choices, but this one might actually be the stupidest." "The key to infiltration," Buzz explained, checking his equipment for the 20th time, "is confidence and proper documentation. Luckily, I've been forging identification papers as a hobby for years." "Why?" Penny asked. "You never know when the shadow government might try to erase your identity. Better to have backups." Buzz's paranoid preparations had produced an impressive collection of fake credentials. According to their new paperwork, they were a waste management inspection team conducting a surprise audit of Nexus 7's disposal systems. Jake was lead sanitation analyst Morrison. Penny was chief recycling engineer Wrench, and Buzz was senior waste flow coordinator Killington. "This is either brilliant or insane," Jake muttered, adjusting his official-looking clipboard. "Why not both?" Penny replied, checking the modified engineering scanner she'd rigged to look like waste detection equipment. The plan was simple in the way that all terrible plans seem simple until you actually try to execute them. They would dock at the prison service bay, conduct their inspection while locating Dr. Voss, then somehow extract her during the confusion they were about to create. Nexus 7 Control. This is Waste Management Shuttle Gamma 7 requesting permission to dock for scheduled sanitation audit. Buzz transmitted with the confident boredom of someone who did this every day. Gamma 7, we have no record of any scheduled inspection. Check your waste disposal compliance calendar, Control. We're responding to an anonymous tip about improper biohazard containment. You know how seriously the Galactic Health Department takes these things. There was a long pause. Jake held his breath, certain they were about to be vaporized by defense platforms. Gamma 7, you're cleared for docking at Service Bay 7. Please proceed immediately and complete your inspection quickly. We're on high alert due to recent security concerns. Acknowledged, Control. We'll be as thorough as possible. Jake looked at Buzz with new respect. How did you know that would work? Simple psychology. Nobody wants to be the person who denied a health inspection and ended up responsible for a disease outbreak. Bureaucrats are more afraid of paperwork than prison breaks. Docking went smoothly, mainly because the service bay was designed for automated supply deliveries and rarely saw actual human activity. They were met by a single, extremely bored-looking guard who barely glanced at their credentials. "Just don't touch anything dangerous and try to finish before shift change," the guard said, then wandered off to find somewhere more comfortable to nap. "Professional security at its finest," Penny observed. They spent the next hour conducting an increasingly ridiculous waste inspection while actually mapping the prison's layout and security systems. Jake discovered that his years of cleaning experience made him surprisingly good at identifying potential security weaknesses. Janitors, it turned out, noticed things that guard training never covered. Ventilation systems older than expected, Penny reported, scanning a maintenance panel. "I could probably reroute airflow to create a distraction if needed." "Guard rotation follows a predictable pattern," Buzz added, having spent 20 minutes timing patrol routes. "Shift change happens in 30 minutes, which will give us a 12-minute window with minimal coverage." "Found our target," Jake announced, consulting his fake inspection checklist while actually reading the prisoner manifest he'd borrowed from an unattended security desk. "Dr. Lyra Voss, Cell Block D, Level 7, Maximum Security Wing." "Of course she's in maximum security," Penny sighed, because nothing about this mission could be easy. They made their way deeper into the prison, Jake pushing a cart full of waste analysis equipment that was actually cleaning supplies and improvised tools. The maximum security wing was everything you'd expect from a place designed to hold the galaxy's most dangerous criminals: energy barriers, automated defense systems, and guards who looked like they ate small planets for breakfast. "There," Jake whispered, pointing to a cell at the end of the corridor. "That's got to be her." Through the energy barrier, they could see a woman in standard prison attire, sitting at a small desk covered with equations and diagrams scratched into the metal surface with her fingernails. Even imprisoned, Dr. Lyra Voss was still working on her revolutionary discovery. She looked up as they approached, and Jake saw the exact expression he'd expected: intelligent, defiant, and absolutely done with everyone's nonsense. It was the look of someone who'd been telling the truth while everyone around her chose to believe convenient lies. "Let me guess," she said dryly. "You're here to offer me a deal in exchange for my research." The answer's still no. "Actually," Jake replied, "we're here to get you out of this place and expose the corrupt idiots who put you here." For the first time since her imprisonment, Dr. Lyra Voss smiled. Breaking someone out of a maximum security energy cell turned out to be surprisingly straightforward when you had the right combination of paranoid preparation engineering creativity, and janitorial problem-solving skills. The barrier's powered by a standard quantum flux generator, Penny explained, running her scanner over the cell's energy field. I can overload it with a controlled feedback surge, but we'll need a distraction to cover the noise. Way ahead of you, Jake said, pulling a bottle of industrial-strength cleaning solution from his cart. This stuff is designed to dissolve organic compounds. What do you think happens when it interacts with the prison's air recycling system? Buzz nodded approvingly. Chemical warfare through janitorial supplies. I respect the creativity. Jake poured the cleaning solution into a nearby ventilation intake, then waited. Within minutes, alarms started blaring throughout the prison as the air recycling system began producing a smell that could only be described as death mixed with rotting vegetables and disappointment. Emergency ventilation protocol activated, the prison's automated voice announced. All personnel report to designated safe zones. Guards ran past their corridor, covering their faces and shouting about chemical attacks and possible bioweapon deployment. In the chaos, nobody paid attention to 3 waste management inspectors and their unusual equipment. Now, Penny said, attaching her modified scanner to the cell's control panel. There was a brief crackling sound, a flash of light, and the energy barrier flickered out of existence. Dr. Lyra Voss stepped out of her cell with the casual confidence of someone who'd expected this moment all along. I assume you have an exit strategy that's slightly more sophisticated than your entry plan? Actually, no, Jake admitted. We're pretty much making this up as we go. Wonderful. I've been rescued by improvisational idiots. Hey, we're very good at being improvisational idiots, Penny protested, already working on the next security barrier. It's gotten us this far. They made their way back through the prison corridors, Buzz leading with the tactical awareness of his military training and Jake bringing up the rear with Professor Nibbles' travel cage. The hamster had been unusually quiet during the infiltration, which Jake attributed to stress. In reality, Zephyr was monitoring the prison's communication systems and calculating optimal escape routes. Guards are regrouping faster than expected, Buzz reported, checking his makeshift scanner. We've got maybe 5 minutes before they realize the chemical smell was a distraction. The shuttle's too far, Penny said, consulting the prison schematic they'd memorized. We need another way out. That's when Professor Nibbles started squeaking urgently and pointing toward a maintenance hatch with his tiny paw. The hamster's right, Dr. Voss said, examining the hatch. This leads to the external waste disposal system. If we can reach the ejection port, we might be able to use emergency escape pods. Jake stared at his pet. How does a hamster know prison architecture? Professor Nibbles squeaked innocently, which translated to, I've been studying this place's blueprints for the past hour, but I can't exactly tell you that without blowing my cover. They crawled through maintenance tunnels that were definitely not designed for human travel. Jake's claustrophobia fighting a pitched battle with his determination to see this through. Behind them, the sounds of the prison security response grew louder and more organized. There, Dr. Voss pointed ahead to a larger chamber. Emergency pod bay. Each pod is designed for single-person evacuation, but we might be able to modify the launch sequence. The escape pods were basic survival capsules, barely large enough for one person and equipped with just enough life support to reach the nearest inhabited system. They were also the prison's last line of defense against catastrophic system failure, which meant they were completely autonomous and couldn't be remotely controlled. I can link the navigation systems, Penny said, already working on the pod controls. If we launch simultaneously, we should stay together long enough to rendezvous us with our shuttle. Should? Buzz asked. Engineering is more art than science sometimes. The sound of guards entering the maintenance tunnels convinced everyone that should was good enough. They climbed into separate pods, with Jake taking Professor Nibbles in his. As the launch sequence initiated, Jake couldn't help but appreciate the irony of escaping from prison using the prison's own emergency systems. This is either going to be the most brilliant escape in galactic history, he said to Professor Nibbles, or the most spectacular failure. Professor Nibbles chittered what sounded like agreement but was actually Zephyr activating a small piece of advanced technology hidden in his fur. The escape pods launched in perfect synchronization, their trajectories mysteriously corrected by invisible forces to ensure they reached the stolen shuttle safely. As they transferred back to their original vessel, Jake noticed that Professor Nibbles seemed remarkably calm for a hamster who'd just been shot through space in a metal can. "You're taking this whole thing pretty well, buddy," he said, scratching the hamster's head. Professor Nibbles squeaked modestly, which translated to "You have no idea how much I'm enjoying this break from routine surveillance duty." Dr. Voss settled into the shuttle's passenger area, looking around at their improvised rescue vehicle with amusement. "So what's the next part of this plan? Please tell me you have somewhere to go besides anywhere that isn't a maximum security prison." Jake grinned. "Actually, we do. It's time to tell the galaxy exactly what the Galactic Council doesn't want them to know." As they flew away from Nexus 7, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of something much bigger than a simple prison break. The Galactic Broadcasting Network's main transmission station on Centauri Prime was exactly the kind of corporate fortress Jake expected from an organization that controlled the information flow across known space. Lots of glass, chrome, and security guards who looked like they bench-pressed asteroids for fun. "This is insane," Dr. Voss said as they studied the building from their shuttle's concealed position. "You want to break into GBN headquarters and hijack their primary broadcast feed to expose government corruption. Do you have any idea how many laws we'll be breaking?" "Lost count after the prison break," Jake replied cheerfully. "Besides, what's the worst they can do? Throw us in space jail?" "We just escaped from space jail," Penny pointed out. "Exactly. We're practically experts now." Buzz had been studying the building's security systems with the focused intensity of someone whose paranoia had finally found its perfect target. "Good news and bad news. Good news, their external defenses are designed to stop military assault, not infiltration. Bad news, their internal security assumes anyone who gets past the external defenses is supposed to be there." "How is that bad news?" Jake asked. "It means once we're inside, we'll be trapped in a building full of people with access to galaxy-wide communication systems who can call for help." Dr. Voss had been working on her presentation during the flight, converting her revolutionary energy research into terms that ordinary citizens could understand. "If we can broadcast for just 10 minutes, I can explain everything. The clean energy process, the Council's suppression efforts, the economic implications. People deserve to know what their government is hiding." Jake looked at his unlikely team, a paranoid ex-soldier, a sarcastic engineer, a brilliant scientist, and a hamster who seemed unusually invested in galactic politics. "You know what? Let's go change the galaxy." Getting into GBN headquarters required Penny's most creative engineering yet. She managed to hack the building's service elevator systems, allowing them to enter through the parking garage maintenance area. Jake's janitorial experience proved invaluable once again, as he navigated the building's service corridors with the confidence of someone who belonged there. "Broadcasting studios on the 42nd floor," Buzz reported, consulting his stolen building schematic. "We need to reach the main transmission control room during prime time for maximum audience." They made their way through the building, Jake pushing a cart full of cleaning supplies while Professor Nibbles rode along in apparent contentment. The hamster was actually monitoring building security and disabling automated alarm systems with technology his species had developed for deep cover operations. The transmission control room was everything Jake had expected from a facility that shaped public opinion across the galaxy: impressive, intimidating, and run by people who'd clearly never been questioned about their decisions. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jake announced as they entered the control room, "we're interrupting your regularly scheduled propaganda to bring you something completely different. The truth." The technicians and supervisors stared at them in confusion and growing alarm. Jake realized he'd never actually figured out how to take control of a galactic broadcast network. Fortunately, Dr. Voss had. She walked calmly to the primary control console and began entering commands with the confidence of someone who'd spent years working with advanced communication systems. "Broadcasting in 30 seconds, she announced. "I suggest everyone remain calm and let us finish our presentation before calling security." "You can't do this," sputtered the broadcast supervisor, a pompous Centaurian with more tentacles than sense. "This is illegal." This is treason. This is necessary, Jake interrupted. And honestly, after what we've been through today, your threats are adorable. The broadcast began with Dr. Voss explaining her discovery in clear, simple terms. Clean energy that could be produced anywhere, cheaply and safely, without the exotic materials and dangerous processes that kept the galaxy dependent on the Galactic Council's energy monopolies. The technology exists, she said, looking directly into the camera. It works. I've tested it. The only reason it's not powering your homes and businesses right now is because certain powerful individuals prefer to maintain artificial scarcity for profit. Jake watched the control room staff as the broadcast continued. He could see the exact moment when they stopped thinking about their jobs and started thinking about their energy bills. The broadcast was interrupted when Council Chairman Valdris himself appeared on split screen, his reptilian features twisted with outrage. Citizens of the galaxy, Valdris announced in his most authoritative voice, you are witnessing a terrorist attack on public safety. Dr. Voss is a dangerous criminal who has stolen classified military technology. Her so-called clean energy is actually a weapon of mass destruction designed to. Oh, shut up, Jake said, stepping into camera view. You know what's a weapon of mass destruction? Charging families half their income for basic electricity while sitting on technology that could provide it for free. Chairman Valdris focused on Jake with the kind of attention usually reserved for particularly annoying insects. And who exactly are you to question the Galactic Council's authority? Jake Morrison, professional janitor and amateur pain in the ass. I've spent 5 years cleaning up messes. And you know what I've learned? The biggest messes are always made by people who think they're too important to clean up after themselves. What followed was less a formal debate than a galaxy-wide roasting session, with Jake systematically dismantling every one of Chairman Valdris's arguments using nothing but common sense and a complete lack of respect for authority. You want to know the difference between me and you? Jake concluded. I actually work for a living. You just sit around making decisions that other people have to live with. And honestly, I've seen better leadership from the Blorgens, and they spend half their time throwing up. The broadcast ended with Dr. Voss providing detailed technical specifications for her energy process, complete with instructions for independent verification. By the time security forces stormed the control room, the information was already spreading across the galaxy's communication networks. Well, Jake said as they were surrounded by heavily armed guards, that was fun. I think it worked. The answer came in the form of spontaneous demonstrations erupting on dozens of worlds, as ordinary citizens demanded answers from their governments about why they'd been kept dependent on expensive energy while cheaper alternatives existed. 3 months later, Jake Morrison was back to cleaning up alien messes aboard the Cosmic Delight, and honestly, he'd never been happier to see crystallized Blorgen digestive juice. The galaxy had changed. Chairman Valdris and half the Galactic Council were awaiting trial for corruption and conspiracy. Dr. Voss's clean energy technology was being implemented on dozens of worlds, with more coming online every week. The energy monopolies were collapsing faster than a house of cards in a hurricane. Jake had been offered numerous prestigious positions, hero of the galaxy, special advisor to the new interim government, even his own talk show called Common Sense with Jake Morrison. He'd turned them all down. I tried the hero thing, he explained to Penny, who'd accepted a position as Chief Innovation Officer for the new Galactic Energy Initiative. It was exhausting. People kept expecting me to have opinions about important stuff. You literally overthrew a corrupt government using janitorial supplies and sarcasm, Penny pointed out. Yeah, but that was easy. They were idiots. Actual governance requires competence and patience, and I have neither. Buzz had found his calling as head of security for Dr. Voss's new research foundation. His paranoid tendencies turned out to be perfectly suited for protecting revolutionary technology from corporate espionage and government interference. The nice thing about working for honest people, he'd told Jake, is that the conspiracies are all external, much easier to track. Dr. Voss herself had become something of a galactic celebrity, traveling from world to world teaching the new energy technology and advocating for scientific transparency. She'd sent Jake a message thanking him for believing in her when nobody else would. It wasn't that I believed in you, Jake had replied. I just couldn't stand the people who didn't. Professor Nibbles remained Jake's faithful companion, though Jake had noticed the hamster seemed unusually well informed about galactic politics lately. What Jake didn't know was that Zephyr had requested permanent assignment to monitor human behavior, specifically Jake's behavior, which his superiors found endlessly fascinating. You realize, Zephyr had reported to his handlers, that this human accomplished more in one day than most civilizations manage in decades, and he doesn't even seem to consider it particularly significant. Is that typical human behavior? His commanding officer had asked. I have no idea. That's why I need to keep studying him. Jake was cleaning the VIP lounge, humming off key and contemplating whether the purple stains on the furniture were from Blorgen digestive issues or some kind of exotic paint, when his cleaning cart started beeping again. Oh, come on, he muttered, looking at the communication array he'd never bothered to remove. Really? The signal resolved into another desperate transmission, this time from someone calling themselves Captain Rex Starfire, who was apparently trapped on a mining station controlled by space pirates and needed immediate rescue. Captain Rex Starfire? Jake said to Professor Nibbles. What kind of name is that? Sounds like something a kid would make up playing Space Adventure. Professor Nibbles squeaked thoughtfully, which translated to actually, that's probably his real name. Humans have terrible naming conventions. Jake stared at the communication array, then at the mess surrounding him, then at the vast expanse of space visible through the lounge's viewport. Somewhere out there, Captain Rex Starfire was probably having the worst day of his life, and the only person who'd received his distress call was a janitor with a track record of getting involved in situations that were way above his pay grade. You know what, Professor? Jake said, scratching the hamster behind his tiny ears. I really should change my communication frequency. This whole accidental hero thing is getting out of hand. Professor Nibbles chittered in what sounded like agreement but was actually eager anticipation. Jake looked at the communication array one more time, sighed deeply, and started planning another completely insane rescue mission. Fine, he said to the universe in general. But next time, I'm charging consultation fees. As the cosmic delight continued its journey through the stars, Jake Morrison, professional janitor and very reluctant hero, began plotting his next adventure in making the galaxy a slightly less terrible place, one rescued scientist and overthrown corrupt government at a time. After all, somebody had to clean up the mess.